So if you look at that plant and you look closely at the flower, you'll notice it kind of resembles one of our landscape plants called potentilla.
This is one of the species of black-eyed Susans, but this particular one is only known from fens. It likes calcareous, wet soils, and although it's a black-eyed Susan, it's a little bit different than the one you'd find growing in cultivation or in your yard.
Right behind that one, we have another really cool one that has a yellow flower. What's that one called?
That's called prairie dock, and very appropriately, it's a prairie species. But prairie dock's kind of interesting in that here in Gallagher Fen, look at the leaf. The leaves are very deeply cut, and typically they're not that deeply cut. In most of the prairies of Ohio, in fact, prairies throughout the tallgrass prairie region, the leaves are entire, they're not deeply cut. They're like the other ones across the stream from us that are not deeply cut. That's more characteristic. But here at Gallagher, we find these deeply cut ones. And this, by the way, is just a genetic variant. And we find the same thing on the Darby Plains. That's called twig rush, Cladium myriscoides. And what's interesting about that is that, again, we talked about in fens we have primarily grasses and sedges and rushes. And this is a type of rush.
Guy, what is this delicate little blue flower right here?
Isn't that a pretty thing? That's called Comm's lobelia. And it's restricted to fens. It's one of those things that's only found within a fen community. It's Lobelia calmii. It's named after Peter Kalm, who was one of Linnaeus' students who botanized in the United States. And Linnaeus, to honor his student, named that whole genus. And of course, we have many other species, as you well know, in horticulture that are also lobelias. But this little dainty thing is one of the fens in Ohio and wherever fens are found.
Guy, what is this beautiful plant right here that looks like a larkspur?
Isn't that cool looking? It is a larkspur. This is called tall larkspur. It's Delphinium exaltatum. Exaltatum means tall. And actually, probably the center of the population of this species is right here in Ohio. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service was studying this plant a number of years ago because it was quite rare elsewhere around the country, and it was being considered for federal listing. But we have the bulk of the population. It's not abundant in Ohio, but we find it in fens particularly, and we find it in very alkaline soil, wet soils down like around Adams County in extreme southern Ohio. And we have some really nice individual plants right here that we didn't even know were here until we started cutting back the trees and allowing the sunlight to access the fen meadow, and all of a sudden, wow, voila, it popped right up.
So we're nearing the end of our time together here, Guy. How did you guys even discover this way back in the beginning? I mean, who found this? How did we even know it was here?
Well, it's interesting. Jeff Knoop, who worked for the Nature Conservancy, was looking on aerial photographs of potential fen sites. And on an aerial photograph, this showed up as a band of treeless area. And so he came in to explore it. And actually, lo and behold, here was this beautiful fen. There's another component to it that's further to our east that he missed. And after we acquired this and started clearing the trees back and letting the fen come back into play, we found the other fen as well, which is sort of a sister to this fen, also at the toe of the hill. So it was actually first spotted by looking at aerial photographs, which showed the openings.
So as you look at a map of Clark County, where would people look around to see where we have other fens then located?
Wherever you have springs seeping out of a hillside, you're very likely to have fens, unless it's so overgrown with trees, because most fen species are shade intolerant. So in some cases where we used to have fens, the trees have closed in, the fen species have all died out. But in many cases like here, where the soil is still very, very wet, very, very cold, the trees haven't been able to invade very much. And they don't get to invade until there's enough peat that's built up that enables them to invade. And that's what we've done right in this particular section of the prairie fen. We cut back a lot of the trees and honeysuckle and just other native trees to open it up back to sunlight. And a lot of these species then popped up that we didn't even know were here, that had been here historically, but had been reduced to just teeny little populations that were virtually, you couldn't even find them because of the thickness of the vegetation.
Well, Guy, this has been an outstanding couple of hours spending time walking down through the fen. It's one of my favorite places. I really appreciate you coming down. How would somebody go about helping with keeping some of the invasive species and keeping this looking the way it is right now? What do we need to do?
Well, we're always looking for volunteers, particularly retired people or college students or just people that want to do something meaningful to make the world a little better place. And it takes a lot of labor to cut back these invasive species and keep them at bay. And We don't have enough staff, and of course the Division of Natural Areas and Preserves, because of funding cuts, is really hurting right now. So we are actively recruiting volunteers, people who are interested. In fact, this particular site, Gallagher Fen, was kept up for a long time by a fellow by the name of Bill Arnold, and we've named the trail system in his honor. Bill has since passed away, but he was retired from the Air Force, and he wanted to do something more meaningful with his life than he'd ever done before. And basically, Bill is responsible for maintaining this particular nature preserve for a very long time, and just did a marvelous job. We couldn't have functioned without his help.
And as you've seen, and Guy has mentioned throughout the program, we have invasive species. Honeysuckle was encroaching, and now they've cut it back. And if we don't take care of this as a community, we won't have this place to really enjoy in years to come, or for our children to enjoy. So if you're interested, or you have a service group, an organization who might be interested in helping, please contact me at the Clark County Extension Office, and we'll try to get people hooked up with the Department of Natural Resources and get some volunteer friends programs dedicated to taking care of the Gallagher Fen and Nature Preserve. Thanks for our time together. Guy, thank you for coming all the way from Knox County.
My pleasure.
Appreciate that. You've been watching Green and Growing.